Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 69 of Two Amazon Sellers and a Microphone, brought to you by Solozo. Today, Chris and I are going to be talking about how you can expand your business into Europe with a special guest, Andy Hooper from Global Ecom Experts. Andy, thanks for joining us today.
No problem. Gentlemen, thank you very much for having us.
Thanks for joining us so late over there.
Yeah, that's fun. That's why I've got this dodgy light, you see.
Yeah. So, where are you located exactly?
So I'm based an hour south of London in the UK.
Okay.
That's where I live. That's where one of our warehouses is. We've got an office in London, which I don't use at all anymore, pretty much. I've got one in New York I definitely don't use.
Yeah.
An hour south of London is where we're based the majority of the time.
Yeah, so we got you staying up late tonight. It's 9 o'clock over there, but thanks for joining with us. This is going to be great because it's going to be fun to dig in and talk about expanding to Europe. I know this is a topic of conversation with a lot of people a lot of sellers that we deal with on a basis. It's a great way to double your business if you're doing it. And so, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that whole thing is, the whole expansion to Europe, everyone's got, as a seller, you've got all these different ideas and preconceived ideas. Everyone does things for different reasons. Some want to expand to protect their brand. Some want to do it for extra revenue, profit share. Everyone's doing it for different reasons. And I think that, the number one thing is to, for expanding to Europe, it's a massive opportunity. Like that by far is the number one thing. And that's what people need to think about ideally.
Yeah. And we'll dig into all of that because we want to hear everything that you have to say. Before we do you just want to take a few minutes and just let everyone know just sort of how you got started in this space, how you became the go-to guy for expanding into Europe? Just let us know a little bit about you.
Yeah, I think the first thing I started doing is, like most people, I think, I probably started flipping things on eBay. I'd buy stuff, flip stuff. I think the majority of people probably started in that way, shape, or form. And then that led into, well, hold on a second. That's happening and that's happening. What can I do? And then that led into some silicone watches. And some silicone watches led into something else, and that led into something else, and that sort of spiraled. And I was more of a hobby seller, on Amazon, eBay, just flipping a few bits. I never took it really seriously. It was just a case of just doing some bits, some bread and butter, just getting by, making a few thousand here and there, not really pushing it in any way, shape, or form. And I was doing that alongside a job, like the most of us. We started off as a bit of a side hustle. I then started doing wedding photography and a couple of other side hustles. And all these sort of side hustles were all sort of taking off. And in the end, I decided I'd better start a business of my own. And, and I didn't go down the full-time Amazon route as a seller. I actually ended up with hooking up with somebody else where we came up with an idea and it sort of scaled into Global E-commerce Experts. But my sort of journey started in the crash of 2009 where, like a lot of people, I had no money because all the world was closing around us. And at that point, I vowed never to be in that situation ever again, that no do else could control my money ever again come the next recession. That was like the ultimate goal. So, whether we've hit that or not, I don't know. It depends on whether you think we're in a recession or not. But there we go. We're not going to discuss that here, right?
Different topic.
Oh, that's right. So when did you start the Global Ecom Experts?
So the idea came late 2016. And we sort of started putting things together. And like a lot of businesses, the official date is like 2017. But like many businesses, we probably put in a fair amount of graft before that. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears probably went into that a long time before that. And getting things ready, getting things set up, working out how stuff could work and operate. And then, they then started in sort of 2017 where we really started to gain some traction, some momentum where we were like, actually, we should probably start formalizing some of this. And that sort of happened beginning in sort of 2017. And ever since then, touch wood, we've been incredibly lucky and fortunate in, making some great partners and seeing some great growth over the years.
Well, it's certainly a huge opportunity. I mean, and it's a growth market right now. Obviously, with everything that's happened with the pandemic, you've got people that have never been they've been in a mom and pop stop or retail. Now they're expanding into e-commerce. You've got people that have started on the .com on the U.S. market, and they're looking to expand because it's super competitive and they want to expand to different marketplaces. And you have Amazon growing like crazy and opening markets all over the place, which opens up this opportunity. So I would love to, I mean, I know Chris and I have a ton of questions, but I'd love just to sort of walk through what that looks like for someone like Chris. Chris and I both sell. We both sell basically exclusively in the U.S. marketplace. There's been, we'd like to expand. We talk with sellers all the time that would like to expand. And, there's some, seems like there's a lot to jump through. But explain what that looks like. Let's just start from the beginning. Someone who's looking to expand into Europe, and then they want to work with you. What are some of the first steps involved?
Yes, I think I'm just going to backtrack slightly from that before I answer that, Dustin. That's right, because when we first started GE Global E-commerce Experts, the sort of we started off with VAT, warehousing, and all these sort of things, and being me is that I want to. Our goal is to successfully expand every e-commerce seller into Europe, because I fundamentally believe that there's millions of products out there that I just would love, right? So I spoke to someone 2 days ago who's got a completely unique product based in Australia. He's based in New Zealand, but he's got he's expanding, starting .com, then moved to Australia, and is now going into Europe, right? This product I've never seen. I'm like, this would revolutionize my holidays. Like, I need this product, right? So for me, how many other products out there are like that could just make my life easier, my life better? So I'm like on this mission to basically make that happen. How many of those products can we get into Europe that will help change people's lives for one way or another? Now, I'm talking about a tent on a beach. Like, that's not really going to solve any world problems, is it? But it's amazing, Yeah. So it all came about of, we started working with sellers. You wanted to expand sellers from outside Europe in. So 90% of our clients are all based in the States. The other 10%, 8% are based Asia, Australia, those sort of areas, and 2% are probably in Europe for our warehousing and things like that. And when we're working with sellers, it's when you're moving to a new market, the biggest thing that you want is the least amount of friction and the least amount of hurdles in your way. And what you then want is, someone who can guide you through every step of the process to just make that simple and easy, because it's just a pain in the backside. Everyone goes, I can't expand to Europe because I need this, I need this, I need that. This one says I need this. This is a pain in the backside. What about this? It just seems too complicated. So if we then look at the maths and go, look, there's 360 million people broadly in North America. There's 560 million people in Europe. Well, all of a sudden, you start looking at the numbers and going, hold on a second, that just makes sense. The markets are quite split, though. We'll come on to the markets in a bit. And I think that what we looked at was, how do we support sellers in that? Yes, we've got the VAT. Yes, we've got the warehouse. But what do sellers actually need to make it a success? And we've got something, what we call the success pathway. And if you at the end, we'll tell you where to go and you can grab a hold of what that looks like. But really, there's 6 steps. The first thing is the compliance piece. How do you get your product compliant and you as a business compliant to sell into the marketplace? And this framework could be used going into any sort of different new market. Like, yes, we've tailored it for Europe, but if you was going to Japan or India or Australia, you could use the same framework. So that's the first thing to say. So the first thing is compliance. What do you need in the UK Europe, you need VAT, right? So you need to get your business VAT registered in the countries you need to fulfill from. You need to make sure that your product is compliant with the regulations and the all of those things are sort of working and happening. So like that whole compliance piece is like a whole can of worms shooting up all over the place. And you haven't even launched or sent a product, have you? So they're like the first hurdles you need to overcome. And then it's like, well, what marketplace do I need to launch on? Now, you know, a lot of sellers we work with sell on Amazon. So if you're used to selling on Amazon in .com, then launching on Amazon in Europe just makes perfect sense. But just because you do $1 million, 100 grand, 10 million, whatever in the States on Amazon, doesn't mean you're going to do that the same in Europe, because the market is much more splintered. One, the marketplaces aren't nearly as big. And actually, some of the marketplaces off Amazon are bigger than Amazon. So, you know, when you start looking at those, that doesn't mean say that will stay like that, but you need to strategically think about which marketplaces you're going to launch on and how, and the resources you've got to make that happen. So they're like the initial steps. Like, how do you overcome those things? You know, you've got the shipping. You know, where do I make payments? Like, there's about another million things you could discuss and go through. But I could probably pause there to give you probably some questions to come into that.
Yeah, yeah, that's the problem I had. Is like when I wanted to expand in Europe, there was all this like legality stuff, VAT I had to set up, and then I had to figure out how to get inventory over there. It was very confusing to do on your own. But with your service, how long does it take for somebody like myself, if I want to expand back into Europe, how long does it take me to get set up with the VAT, to start getting inventory in there, get my listings up? What's that process look like? How long a time frame is that?
So there's a couple of different points there. So the first thing is we can do it in 14 days. We could get you to expand in 14 days and get you selling. Now, there is a slight caveat there. VAT and getting VAT registered is a caveat. Now, we could probably get you set up like that. Now, with the UK, what we can do is, the UK VAT registration takes anywhere between 2 and 4 weeks, depending on you as a seller and a whole host of other issues that are going around the government, right? So, you know, but if we was to, the first thing you need to do is that piece, right? So you register for VAT. But what we can do is we can get you a temporary EORI number. And an EORI number is a number to ship into the UK or into Germany or Netherlands or wherever else. So what you could do is we could get you set up. We could get you a temporary EORI number. You could ship your products. We could have all of that done in 14 days. What we might not be able to do is launch you on Amazon if you don't have the VAT number. So you would need the VAT number in order to input that into Amazon to launch that product. But really, you know, a lot of products a lot of clients we're working with, it's, well, okay, I can go on Amazon, but I could also, I've already got a Shopify store or website over here somewhere. Well, I could turn that on and I could be shipping and selling that straight away. Because if you've got that temporary EORI number and you've already registered for VAT, that process is starting. So actually, with the right partners, you can do that quickly. Like, It's about sewing it all together, isn't it?
Yeah. So when the listings need to be created, that's another service. That's another issue I had, is like getting the translations for the listings and getting those to match up. Is that something you guys also offer?
Yeah, so all of those sort of things we can take care of. But actually, you know, from a listings point of view, from Amazon to start with, Amazon you'll be able to sync your listings. So you go underneath your sell inventory tab and go down to sell globally. I mean, the sake of 3 or 4 buttons, like your inventory, your listings are in Europe. Like, it's almost that simple. And you know, yeah, we could help you with listings, and getting keywords is a separate issue. You know, getting the keywords right. You know, if we look at just the differences between the US language and the UK language, whilst we all speak the same and we can all communicate effectively, no problems, there are some differences in those languages. So actually some of the keywords might need to differ. And then when you start looking at French, German, Italian, Spanish, Dutch, Swedish, Polish, all of those other marketplaces, you need to translate. So the first thing is just use Google Translate. Like, it's free, it's simple, and it's easy. Yes, we can pay for a native tongue translator, and I'd love to offer the service to you. But actually, just to start off with, to get the product out there, Google Translate does the job. Like, once you've sold 2 products, get it translated. Like, the money's there to do it. It's that much. It's not much. So the translations, it comes difficult when you say, well, actually, Andy, we want to do 1,000 listings in the next week. That becomes more of a challenge. But you've got to think more strategically about some of those things, about what that launch sequence looks like to make that a success. Because, you know, if you launch 1,000 products and you don't do any of them properly, well, of course you're not going to sell as much. Like, obvious. So yeah, it's a key piece, the translations, but you don't have to do it all overnight.
I actually like that approach. I mean, that's a similar approach. That's how Chris and I think anyway, is let's do it. Let's get it going. And then if the concept works, then start improving on it. Like you said, if you get a sale, okay, now this is a listing that I need to focus on. Or if I get a couple of sales and like you said, the money's there.
It's the 80-20 rule, Dustin. That you know, what people do is they think, oh, well, I'm not going to be able to do the 20%, so I won't do the 80%. Like, 80% of it is just hitting inventory, hitting sell globally, and sending some stock. Like, it's 80% of the work. The 20% is what's going to make the big difference. But at the end of the day, you don't need to do the 20% just to make it happen, because that's the problem. Everyone suffocates themselves in oh, well, it's all too difficult. When actually it's relatively straightforward. It's just another job we got to do down the line.
I've got another question. I guess I don't know if this is something you're going to talk about next, but okay, in the way that it used to be, at least from what I learned when I was going through this, is you used to be able to ship everything to the UK and have that be fulfilled throughout all of Europe, but now we've got Brexit, and Brexit has changed that. So now you're going to be shipping into different ones. What does that look like, and how do you guys help overcome the challenge of shipping to multiple marketplaces and where to store everything?
Yeah, so Brexit's become an interesting topic. It's made it slightly more diverse, and it's made it slightly more tactical, shall we say. So when you're launching, the launch strategy, exactly that, used to be get VAT registered in the UK, send everything to the UK, and then when you send something, just ship it into the other countries, and you've only got to be VAT registered in one country, right? No problem. So that made it simple. Amazon would use the European fulfillment network to send stuff. The other option was you could send everything to the UK, you could be VAT registered in all the countries and be on the Pan EU program, and you still send it to the UK, and Amazon would send it to all the other warehouses across Europe. Both programs, amazing, great opportunities. Obviously, with Brexit, that's no longer the case. So what has to happen now is when you're launching, you can't just be VAT registered in one country. Now, we actually recommend 3 countries. And those 3 countries are the UK, Germany, and Netherlands. And I'll tell you why probably in a moment. But what it means is when you're sending stock, it means you've got to send stock to 2 locations. Because if you send it all into the UK, you've got to pay customs VAT, import VAT and import duty coming into the UK. Then if you send the stock from the UK to Germany or Netherlands or wherever, you've got to pay that customs charge again. Well, I don't like paying more money than I need to in those customs charges. So what you've got to do is you've got to split those shipments. So the shipments need to go one into the UK and then one into Europe. And I say Europe because it depends on your strategy on where you're going to go. Now, we recommend 3 VAT numbers. And the reason for that is that on Amazon in Europe, the UK and Amazon account for 2/3 of all sales across all the marketplaces. So you definitely want to be registered in the UK and Germany. There's no problem with that. But the problem with registering just Germany is that you'd have to send your stock into Germany. And for anyone who's listening to this right now who's ever sent stock into Germany will know it's the biggest pain in the backside you will ever come across. So What we recommend now is you do the UK, Germany, and the Netherlands. Now, the reason for the Netherlands is you can send stock into the UK and the Netherlands. Both of them have what they call deferment accounts. So what that means is your import VAT can be deferred to your VAT return. So you're not paying the import VAT up front. Now, from a cash flow point of view, cash flow's king. We all know that. That just makes sense. So you then send it into the UK and the Netherlands, and from the Netherlands, you can then ship into Germany. And because it's already in Europe, it removes 90% of the grief of shipping into Germany. And that's what a typical launch strategy would look like right now when you're launching into Europe. It increased the cost without a shadow of a doubt, but it is more successful.
That's
a good tip right there.
That is a good tip. Yeah, I can see. Yeah, number one, this is why I've had hangups about entering the market. Is everything you're talking about? Is I have nightmares of a huge VAT tax bill, and then I've got inventory sitting in the wrong country,
Yes.
and it's or something like Brexit happens. I'm sure there was a lot of people that got hit by that when their inventory is all in the UK, and then.
I mean, I spoke to a client today. Well, they're not a client. We're hoping they'll be a client. But they were like, yeah, we didn't really do anything with Brexit. And we're now having a huge amount of trouble shipping everything from the UK. So they're based in the UK. They're like, we didn't do anything. 40% of our business is in Europe, and we can't ship anything to Europe. Have you got an IORI number in Europe? Nah. Have you got? Nah. Have you got? Nah. No, guys, come on. I've been doing podcasts, webinars, everything for 3 years on Brexit. And we all know, look, we're all guilty of this, aren't we? Like, we all bury our head in the sand with some of these things until it actually happens. We're all guilty of it.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, hopefully that'll help us out for a while.
Yeah, there is a lot of times that I've kicked the can down the road on certain things, and it's you wish. That's why it's so important in this community. Chris and I talk about all the time. You've got to stay networked with everyone in this community, because just like what we're learning right now by having this conversation could be invaluable. So explain the way that inside Europe now, like if you have the inventory in the Netherlands, let's say you ship it there, they can, like the UK did before, can they distribute it amongst all the different countries in Europe, no problem, from one country in there?
So Amazon doesn't have a warehouse in the Netherlands yet. So you'd have to send that to a 3PL. So you send that to a 3PL, and then the 3PL could then send that to Germany. And then from Germany, Amazon, that can be done the same. Or you can merchant fulfill. Or you could go on the Pan-EU program and they'll ship it everywhere for you. So it's exactly the same. The European Fulfillment Network and the Pan-European Network is exactly the same in Europe, just excludes the UK now.
And right now there's no fulfillment centers in the Netherlands, which they've got to be building soon.
There is rumors that they're building one about 5 doors down from where we are. So I don't know how much truth there is in that. I mean, when I say they're 5 doors down, what I mean is like 5 fields down. Yeah. And they're taking all 5 fields.
Yeah. That's exactly what they do. Yeah, we've got a fulfillment center not too far from us, and they're just monsters.
Yeah.
That's incredible what they're doing.
Yeah. That's amazing.
So let's now take it to the next step. Okay. When someone's working with you, we set this up. We've got this, our inventory, hopefully in the UK and in your Netherlands warehouse. Are you helping us distribute that to FBA? What's the next steps now? What are the most critical things from this point forward?
Yeah, so I think that once you've got the compliance piece and the marketplace is all sorted, there's a number of different things that need to happen from there. So you need to ship the product, so we can arrange the shipments for you. Like whether that be sea from China, pallets from the US, whatever that is, we can help you arrange that. We're essentially a broker. We're using other people to do that. You might already have shippers that you prefer to use. No problem with that whatsoever. But in order to make that easy for our clients, we just say, look, we can do the whole end-to-end for you. Like, let's keep it simple. So, we can arrange the shipments, we can arrange the customs declarations, get all those pieces done. And then once they get into country, we can obviously then arrange for the shipments, be that direct to consumer or into Amazon for you, and that could be to other marketplaces as well. It's not just Amazon, although Amazon warehouses tend to be the main warehouses. Everyone else fulfills the marketplaces themselves in most cases. So you've got the marketplace set up, you've got the products, you're getting it, you're either fulfilling it from the warehouses in the UK, Netherlands, wherever else they may be, and you're then getting them those to the sellers wherever that is. And it's relatively straightforward from that piece. We've got the couriers, we've got the logistics all sewn up. We've been doing that for quite a while, and that's just straightforward because it's just fulfillment center, storage facility type stuff. And it's straightforward. I think the secret then is once you've started selling, how do you scale that? Like, we all know that velocity is the key part of all of this. So when you're launching into the marketplace, you need to go in with I don't need to make profit for the first 3 shipments, the first 4 shipments. Like, you've got to get that velocity going. Otherwise, I'm going to put it on the marketplace and I'm going to see what happens. If you don't put a promotion on, if you don't put a voucher on, you don't do a lightning deal, you don't do whatever, it's not going to work. Unless you are incredibly fortunate, you've got an amazing product, there's no one else in the marketplace, and for whatever reason, it just flies. But this isn't 2012 anymore. That doesn't happen. So, the reality is you've got to put some cash behind it. And if you don't, your stock are likely to come and sit in our warehouse and not move.
You're speaking our language now. Because this is the space we live in on a daily basis, helping people with their advertising and launch strategies and all the things that are entailed in that. And yes, your goal is to get that inventory moving, get you up the rankings organically. And I guess what you're saying is when you launch onto a new market, it's like you're launching a new product, even though you're existing. I think you do have an advantage though, because your reviews come over, right? Is that true?
So
.com, do your reviews translate?
So the reviews do translate and do come over, but they only come over for the first 10. So for what happens is the reviews come over, and it shows, here's the reviews from .com, is broadly what it says. Now, when you get to 10 European reviews, they'll go. So basically, don't chase a review at all until you get to 10. And when you get to 10, start chasing reviews. Now,
That's fascinating. I didn't know that.
There was talk of them changing it so that you would have a global review system. But let's be honest, the review system comes under attack from so many different parties so often that, in the papers here, only the weekend was the typical, review scandal, and everything else that goes with it. We get it, I don't know, 2 or 3 times a year over here. I suspect you do there too. It's just one of those things. So obviously they're combating that. They were looking at just centralizing them all across the world so you'd have that advantage. I don't think that's actually come in yet, and someone may know better than I. And if you do, please put in a comment somewhere so we can share that with other people, because I hadn't seen that go live, but they are talking about that. So there's other things like photos. The photos on your listings in the US are synced with the photos in the EU. Although you'll have a different ASIN, the photos are synced. Again, they're looking to change those photos because for certain things like supplements, you need to see it in the language it's in. Well, you can't have 10 photos, one in French, one in English, one in Spanish, one in there's a few little things they are. I know they're working on. I don't know how if that's happened yet. But yeah,
I didn't know that about the images either. I thought you could so you can't upload separate images to a different marketplace.
You can upload separate images, but the problem with that is that it's like when someone hijacks your listing, they still use your photos, because the photos that Amazon deems to be the most popular or the better pictures or whatever the algorithm is are the ones that stay. So if they think your pictures are better in Europe, bear in mind they're probably going to be the same pictures, from the same camera or from whatever, then but that's what I was trying to separate it to account for that. So
that's interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah. There's all these little nuances that happen, like in anything, and this is why you need people in region to make some of these things happen. Like otherwise, you just don't know. How do we do this? How do we do that? We do something what we call an account health check. So we offer account health check. People have been selling for a while. They want to get in contact with us. If they listen to a webinar, we do it for free. So there's just say you heard me on a webinar, you get it for free. And we basically look at your account and sort of look at what you're doing and say, hey, this is what you're doing. And all these little things we're talking about here are just things we pick up on the account health check. In order for you to successfully expand, you need to do this, 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 and this. And here's a report, and off you go away and go and do it. Because there's so many little bits that, even if you are a 7 or 8 figure seller in the States, all of these things you just don't know. Like you work it out eventually, but when you launch, you just want someone to tell you all this information. You don't want to be finding it out as you go. You just want to go, dude, give it to me, sort this out and make it happen, and then tell me what else I need to know, and then we can just crack on and scale. Done.
You're 100% right, because trying to bootstrap this or learn this on the way, whatever it's going to cost to work with you is going to be significantly less than accidentally sending all of your inventory to the UK the week before Brexit happens and have it stuck there.
Yes.
So when we talk about this all the time, it's so much better just to work with an expert, let them do it, let them help you through it, and go. I do want to touch on one more nuance, because this is another one that really concerned me. And it concerned me more in just the amount of time I think I have to focus on it. Pricing. Okay, so there's so many variables in the pricing. Number one, you got currencies fluctuating all the time. Okay, so you might have been profitable yesterday, and now you didn't do anything wrong, but you're not profitable today. I never used to sell. And then you've got the convolutedness of all the VAT taxes that U.S. sellers don't understand how to even calculate that into their bottom line per product. Yeah. Where do you guys come in on that, and what do you do with pricing? How often
the pricing is a great one. So, for example, the exchange rate went up to 1 to 1.4. It was 1.2 in the middle of last year, pound to $1.2, right? Last week it hit 1.4. I think it's about 1.35 now. But give or take. So it's changing all the time. And obviously we have the same problem with this as well from when we're charging clients. One day our product's $1,000 and the next day it's $1,400, by no fault of anyone's. Yeah.
Right.
So there's all of these problems. Now, the best way of doing that in the UK is, one, you've got to price your product that's going to sell on the marketplace. So that's the first thing to say. You can't have a fluctuating bracket depending on the exchange rate. So what you got to focus on is how do you sell these products in the UK? Now, all right, I agree you might have bought the product in dollars, so there's a fluctuation and everything else, but you've got to have a standing point. What does that product cost you? And then when you launch, you've got to include the VAT in the price of the product. And this is where a lot of people go wrong, because what they say is, hey, here's my glass, and I want to sell this for £10. Yeah. And in the US, you then have sales tax added onto that. Well, in the UK, EU, the VAT is included in that price. So actually, if you know you need to make £10 on this, well, actually, you need to be selling that for £12. So you're including that. You need to include the VAT in that piece. Now, that's pricing structure. Then let's talk about how you take the money in and out to make that work for you. Because, I'm no currency expert. So here's my hands up. I'm not advising anyone on currency. There's no strategies involved. There's that due diligence. I don't know. Anyway, so now there are certain PayPal type accounts. So Payoneer is one that we use and work with very, very closely. There's OFX, there's Ping Pong, who we've also worked with over the past. So what you can basically do is Amazon can pay you, instead of taking it straight out of Amazon into your bank account, you take it directly from Amazon into a payment gateway. All right. Now what happens is because it's in pounds, it comes into your payment gateway in pounds. Yeah. That means that when you're paying your VAT, you can pay that in pounds straight to the government. So here's where people go wrong: is they go, well, I'm going to get all my money from Amazon and take it to my US bank account. Amazon's going to charge you 6% to do that. You're then going to say, well, I've got to pay my VAT bill. And then the bank's going to charge you a currency conversion, a wire fee, whatever, to pay that. So all of a sudden, you've lost a whole wedge of cash. When actually all you needed to do is put it into a payment gateway. Comes in from Amazon in pounds, you pay it in pounds. You haven't spent a single pence, dime, cent, whatever in paying that bill. And then what you do is you can accumulate that in that account. Now, obviously, that's then down to you when you pull that out and make that work for you. You need to think strategically about that. Obviously, if you need the money, you've got to pull it out. Mm-hmm. But if you can leave it in there and look what the rate's doing in the exchange rate, you can do that because you can pay for your services. You could pay our services from that account. There's no exchange rate. The euro accounts come into the same account. You've got euros there. You just got to be clever about how you do these things rather than, I'm going to lose loads of money on this. Well, actually, what do I need to do to minimize the risk of doing that? Because whilst you might lose some money some weeks, there's going to be times where you're going to be making massive gains as well. And in order to do that, you've got to basically work with that. And, you've got to look at what's going on in the world. So when a new president comes in, for example, the exchange rate always goes up for the first 7 weeks after every time. Now, I only know that because someone told me that the other day. It's not like I'm any currency expert. Because the exchange rate, so you've got I think maybe it was 2 or 3 months, whatever it was, there's always a positive increase in that period. So you wouldn't take money out. You know that. Don't take any money out in those 7 weeks. Done. So there are tools and knowledge out there to support and help you. It's just understanding where that is and what you need to do to make that happen.
Yeah, and this is where I wish I would have known that, because I did this exact same thing. I pulled the money out, and then I got a VAT bill, and I had to go pay the VAT. And then I was like, "What in the world is going on?" I kept getting these random letters from the UK. I was like, I gotta get this over with, because I kept getting all this mail. So if I had to start over again, I would definitely use somebody in my corner to help me with the service. One thing I want to talk about is Amazon here in the States is big on brand and brand registry and having a brand around the product. How does that work with the marketplace? If I'm brand registered in the US, does that carry over, or do I need to do it separately?
So no, you have to do it separately. I mean, you've got the brand, which is fine, but you'll need to register for a trademark now in the UK and in Europe. And obviously, until you've got that trademark, you can't register for brand registry. And I think that Amazon's going down this route more and more and more. You can just see it every month. There's a bigger push in that area.
Mm-hmm. Every new feature they come out with, every advertising feature is all about brand.
Exactly that. And that's, I think that if you haven't registered your brand yet, then you need to be on that, wherever you are in the world. And when you launch into a new marketplace, that's part of the strategy is you're becoming brand registered, making sure you've got an address in the local region. All of these things are required. And there's so many of them that you just couldn't know them all. It's just impossible. So that's where you do need those support and help. And I think that brand registry is really, really key going forwards. I think that, it adds cost. It adds, it just adds cost and complications. But what it does do is it gets rid of rubbish, because not everyone's going to be doing it. Not everyone's going to be registering their brand. It's going to be too much for some people, which means if you've got to put some cash into it to make it happen, that's a good thing, because the seller over here is not going to do that. the seller that's got, let's say, 10,000 products from the same factory as you that you've made yours on, and they're just launching it, and they've all of a sudden got 1,000 reviews. They're not going to be doing brand registry because they're not going to get that product registered.
Right.
So there is a lot of things like that, and things like VAT now being taken from the marketplaces rather than from the seller. There's less chance of sellers going, well, I'm not paying the VAT and doing a runner, because Amazon's taking the VAT and giving it, like it is Nexus in the States. They're giving it to the government. So sellers that were under 20% under your sales price, for example, can't do that anymore because they got to pay the VAT as well. So actually, the number of sellers has reduced. The price of stock has gone up, and it means that actually bona fide sellers that have been working hard, doing a great job, are actually being rewarded. And that's what it feels like. Whether that's what actually happens or not as we go down this, that's what it feels like. And that's what we all want, I think.
I would agree. And when somebody starts out with you, where are they at in the process? Are they new to the marketplace, or are they established enough in the US that they've kind of milked that to what it could be, that they're looking to expand in the UK and Europe, and they reach out to you? Is that where are they at?
So most of our sellers are doing at least over 100 grand in the US. We would typically recommend they're probably doing at least 500,000. And that point, there's a conversation of, okay, I'm ready to expand to Europe. I need to do this sooner rather than later. But if you're doing less than 100 grand, it isn't going to work. If you're doing less than 500,000, really, how much capital have you got in that business and resource to make that happen? We all know that the margins aren't absolutely huge. So, it's even 500,000 of sales is not a massive profit margin, and you're not sort of rolling in the cash. So there's an element of, expanding, but doing it the right way. And if you do it too soon, you're just gonna crush all your cash flow. And there's an element of, if you can't do 500,000 in the States, the chances are you're not going to make the EU a success, because you're not going to have the time, you're not going to have the resource, you're not going to have the stock. Like, it's just not going to happen. So, there are exceptions to that. If you're in a high growth product that no one else has got it, your brand needs to be in those countries, it's a Kickstarter type campaign product, then you need to launch. I get that, right? But if you're selling and flipping this, and this, it's probably not going to work. So typically that's what you would look at. You need to be doing 500,000 roughly. You need the time, you need the resource, and then you need to rely on a partner that can basically help you from end to end and answer all those questions. We've got so much resource, all of our podcasts, all of our webinars, we've got an online training program. There's so much education we're putting out there to support sellers. It's out there. You've just got to grasp it, take it, and make it happen.
And if I'm interested in doing that, if sellers are interested in doing that, my thought process would be, let me test out a few SKUs first before sending the whole farm over there. Like, I would test out a couple of SKUs, see how those go, scale those up, and then add a few more. Is that the right process, or do you recommend, send the whole catalog over and a couple of each? Where are you at there?
So I think that depends on the level of seller you are and the resource you've got available to you, because there's two things to that. One, you want to start off relatively gradually, because if you haven't got all the resource to put 2 people behind it to just solely work on that, it's not going to happen. Yeah. If it's just you or a small resource, then you want to launch with a few products and just start with a handful, then the next handful, then the next handful, and so on. Now, the downfall of only starting with a handful of products is that, you've only got a handful of products to sell. If one product doesn't sell in the UK, but it does in Germany, you might not know that. That's the risk. And, we see that, you'll see that in the States. There are products that all of a sudden you think are going to fly that just don't. Like, by you just can't even work it out. So, it's the same in Europe. Just because you've got 10 amazing products, actually 5 of them might not sell. Chances are 5 of them will, but 10 of them will, but there's no guarantee with any of those things. So it's really about, I would say you do it step by step. You do it bit by bit. We're working with some of the biggest sellers on .com in their categories, and they're more cautious than anyone. They're like, well, okay, look, we're going to send one container of this one SKU. We're going to send that in, and that's going to be it. And we're going to try with that. We're going to test the market. Now, I wouldn't send a container of one SKU at all. I might send a container, a 20-foot container of 10 SKUs, because Amazon wants to see you're putting some volume behind it. If you put in 3 of this, 3 of this, 3 of this, if they go and put put the algorithm behind that, what are they going to sell? Like, it's just no point. They want to see 300 of that. They want to see 500 of that. They want to see that you've got stock and you're taking it seriously. But there's a risk of putting enough behind it and putting so much behind it. If it doesn't sell, you've got 10,000 products you can't sell.
Mm-hmm.
There is a balance. So, I know it doesn't give you a definitive answer. What we would do is we would work with the client and say, well, okay, what are you selling in the States? What does that look like? What are your top selling products? Okay, let's look at some of these products first. Let me have a look at those. Which ones are going to sell? Which ones aren't? Well, this one, that one, this one, that one, this one, that one. Move in. Like, that's where you want to get it to, rather than, let's just ship it all in and do it all, because then you won't have any keywords. They won't be translated. You won't be able to do any social behind it if you're doing any additional advertising. So I always suggest start with a decent amount of stock per SKUs. Start off with 10. Then have a strategy to do 10 the next month, then 10 the next month, then 10 the next month. But don't just do 10 and leave it at that, because, Europe's not working for me. Well, how many SKUs did you launch? 10. How many have you got in the States? 1,000.
I've been down that road.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, what other marketplaces are you on in the States? Well, I'm on Walmart. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. How many marketplaces are you on in Europe? Amazon. Really? So there's a whole load of things in there.
Yes. That's a whole nother topic we could
Yes.
have you back on for, is just the other marketplaces that exist in Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, we obviously, as American sellers, we have no idea what the other different marketplaces are. And there's also about 1,000 other questions that we'd love to have and get you back on for.
No kidding.
But this has been so valuable I'll tell you what, the anxiety of going into Europe and all this kind of calmed that a little bit, knowing that there's resources like you out there that can really help everyone through that. So for anybody listening right now, they're qualified, they're doing, $1 million a year in US, and they want to reach out to you. How do they get in touch with you to start working with you?
So best thing to do is just go to our website. I know that's scrolling across the bottom. So www.global-commerceexperts.com. Just Google Global E-Commerce Experts. I'm pretty sure we'll come up. We're on all the usual channels. And if you want to reach out for me direct, feel free. Just go to LinkedIn and go Andy Hooper. And then just look for e-commerce. And I'm sure if you're in e-commerce, there's probably a very high chance that I'm already connected with someone in your network. I would guess. Usual social channels, like you can get us. We've got a whole load of resources that can support sellers. We've got the successful expansion pathway that gives you a guide of what you need to do and how to expand. We've got an online course that talks you through it, and you can just pick up the phone and speak to our advisors, and they'll just guide you through it. Absolutely fine.
If you're thinking about going across the seas here, I would definitely get a hold of Andy. He's going to be somebody you want to have a contact or a conversation with, because I can tell you from experience, I did it on my own. It's overwhelming if you do it by yourself, because there's a lot of things you'll miss, and you don't know what you don't know, and you could really lose your shirt there on some fees.
Chris, maybe that's what we should do. Why don't we go for round 2? And get that settled and get that done, and then we can review it in a few months' time.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go. We can see how it goes. I like it. Exactly. Always be selling. Always be selling.
Yeah, I love it. That's perfect.
Well, I wasn't going to sell it. I'd say let's do it, and we'll do it at like practically nothing for you as a thank you for having us on. And then we'll just do it as a demo, and you can just show people what it's like. Okay. Then just go through boss. We guide you through. Job done.
All right.
We'll set it up
interesting.
after.
I like it. That's
awesome. Well, we'll be in touch about that, Andy, for sure. Again, I know it's almost 10 o'clock in the evening there. Thank you so much for your time, for doing this with us. I mean, this has got to be so much value for our listeners. There's lots of U.S. sellers listening to us right now, and hopefully they'll be getting in contact with you. So again, thanks for everything. We'll have you back on again. For everyone that's listening, if you like this content, if you want to hear amazing people like Andy give you insights into what's going on in the Amazon space and how you can grow your business, make sure you follow us everywhere that we're live streaming this. So we're live streaming this on our Solozo YouTube channel, Solozo's LinkedIn channel, Solozo's Facebook page. Like it, turn on notifications so you're notified when we go live. If you're listening on the podcast, subscribe to it. You'll get notifications of when it's going, when we have new episodes come out, and make sure you leave us a review as well. So that way we can keep bringing on great people like Andy. Andy, thanks again. We'll have you back on, and everyone listening, we'll be back at this again tomorrow.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Absolutely amazing. Have a great evening.
Will do.